Hello and welcome back to our panel discussion talking about game design and whether games have become too big to fail. Again, question mark. So we are here to look towards the future now. And as we have these discussions, always want to take some time to consider what actions we can take as an industry or even individually to improve things. So because we've been talking about large open world releases, that's where the discussion is going to go. So my overall question is, where do we go from here? I'm actually going to go back to Cyberpunk and set some context. I know it's like, is this the Cyberpunk show? But bear with me. It's gonna all like link together. So we talked about the sort of many mistakes of Cyberpunk and its release. But in some ways, it is almost the perfect encapsulation of what is wrong with some aspects of the system we have here in terms of a game that was announced so far in advance of release, a development process that was largely hidden in terms of what was shown, particularly on base consoles, as we know. The marketing hype that was way off the charts, which did no favors in terms of meeting such massive expectations from fans, from media. But it is a project that cost $330 million to make and made its money back, selling 13 million copies as of December 20th last year. So we have this along the lines of games becoming so big, that also goes to the cost of games becoming more expensive to make. So in the first part, I talked about that history of open world games and mentioned Shenmue, which cost, at the time, was the most expensive game at 70 million. It was then eclipsed by GTA 4, which hit the $100 million development cost. And marketing, I think marketing is included in that, in 2008. And then we have the Cyberpunk. So with the cost of games rising, we have the question of like, are these games becoming too big to be allowed to fail, except for Anthem, which rest in peace for that. But my question is, with CD Projekt Red making its development money back, does that actually prove that the approach works? Annie, what do you think in terms of, I won't say did they do the right thing, because I know, we've talked about sort of mistakes that were made, things that could have been done better. But what do you see as things that worked from that system? Because it seemed to have worked. So would you say that's a good way to approach video game design?
It's a very, very difficult question, and when you send me the questions beforehand, it's probably the one that I've spent the most time thinking about. It's very difficult because I don't have a straightforward answer. Like, it feels like it should be a yes or no, but in reality, it's like,
it's complicated.
It's what do you consider a success? Like, is success meaning you build a fan base that feels as passionate about the game as people feel about The Witcher? Is it purely a financial thing and it's like you put money in and you get money out? Is it the studio that you build with the people in it and all of these things? And I think for me, one of the best things that came out of all of this is the beginning of a lot of conversations in the wider narrative. So outside of the game dev community and more in like people like my brother and his friends, and even like my mom chiming in because she saw it on the BBC and all of these things. Yeah, it's and I think the great thing about it is people are starting to understand game dev a little bit better, and also like from that is coming a lot of accountability, both towards studios and towards fans. So for me, that is one of the best things that came out of this whole situation. And I think it's very, very important. It's very important for us to have these conversations and to have like what's the cost of success. kind of a thought, because I know you mentioned Nintendo, and I can't remember which was the title, but I remember like maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, one of the titles they're working on, they came out with a statement where they said, we said we're gonna release the game in a year. We don't consider the game is good enough. We're scrapping it. And that was very. I found that was incredibly brave of them to do.
Yes, I remember.
I can't remember the title.
Was it Metroid? I feel like it was Metroid.
I think so. Yeah, and it was like it was such an honest thing to say. So I'm very much looking forward to more conversations like that, and like, what is the reality of making a game? What does that entail? Like, why is my mom asking me what Cyberpunk is? All of those are important questions.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good thing to bring up in terms of opening up discussion and like learning from that, because one of the things that happened after Cyberpunk I can't remember which month because time has no meaning anymore, but it's definitely after Cyberpunk, where Microsoft showcased the new Halo game, Halo Infinite, and the reaction was not what they expected. No. Now, I'm not necessarily a massive Halo fan, but I did look at that and I thought, it's not. I mean, it looks good. It's fine. It looks fine, but not if this is going to be your flagship thing for your next generation console, and you're touting this as a new experience. It doesn't look like that. And for me, that was an example of, I guess, in a way, the way it should work in terms of the relationship between sort of fans and then developers, is that we're showing you something, and I know for them that was probably like at that stage the final kind of what they were ready to submit, but based on the reaction and the valid criticism and the constructive criticism, let's say, they said, actually, you know what? We're going to delay this game. And I think that's okay. So they get more time to make the game better, and people have their expectations set accordingly. And I think we've seen this year, partly because of COVID, I imagine, a lot of game delays. But I think that's an overall positive, because it means people are getting more time to make the game, and people are also having I say people in terms of like fans, are having an understanding, because it's come from COVID. We're all in that situation. So this is like the one thing where you can sort of say the pandemic, go anywhere. Well, we can't go anywhere in the world, but when we can, say the pandemic, and everyone will know what you're talking about. So we know like what it means to be like working from home. We know that disruption. So when a game is delayed and developers saying, it's a result of, that situation, we like, all right, they're people too. They've got to go through this. So I think that's something that, as a positive silver lining kind of thing. So yeah, like I said, as we're looking at the future and things we can do, is open it out to the panel with this very easy question of what is the solution. So how do we create more realistic timelines within studios and expectations with fans to have more successful launches? I'll start with the studios and with the game makers here. So, Quang, what do you see as a potential solution or action in terms of setting realistic timelines within studios?
I don't know if you know, but developers are notoriously bad at time management in terms of guessing how long a game will take to make. Like the current game I was working on, I thought, it'll take a year at the most, maybe. We're now into our fourth year working on that game, and it's just one of those things where, for many, many reasons, things will get delayed. They generally say, take the time you think it will take to make, double it, and then double it again, just for good measure. But I think to fix things like this, you need to have an understanding, again, that there are people behind this. There are factors outside of people's control. Pandemic being a huge one, as I said, it's something we're all going through, so we can all understand that. But there are production costs and production timelines and pipelines that people don't see that are happening. So maybe you can't get the equipment that you need to make your game. You can't get something like this. These are things outside of your control. And as long as the fans out there can understand that this is what it is, then this is the problem. Then maybe they can be a bit more sympathetic. But it's obviously honest on us to be more communicative about it. Communication is the most important thing there, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that. What would you say, Annie?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's also very important for people to understand why games are considered a creative industry and not a tech industry, is because games are not a programmer sitting in front of a computer and writing code. Games are much more a programmer sitting in front of a computer and writing and creating tools for a lot of people who either do not rely on programming to do their jobs or in a very limited capacity. So you have a little bit of overlap with things like, say, technical artists and 3D artists, but then you have people like game designers and concept artists who work with very high level concepts, like things like what is fun, what is not fun. And you have to figure that out with like different tools and limitations and restrictions and marketing department demands and all of these things. So it's like understanding that the process of making a game in its essence is not as straightforward as writing a string of code. And it's not like writing a GPS tracking app for your car. It's much more about giving the right people the right kind of digital pencils and going through the process. And you see that, for example, in concept art, something might look really great as a 2D sketch, and then you put it in the game, you put it in 3D, you look at it, and you're like, this doesn't fit in anything else we've done. Or you spend a year developing a really cool fighting system, and then you put it in the game, and the testers are just not gelling with it, and you have to watch people play it, and you're sitting there and being like, this is not working, I don't know why, but we need to figure out why. And it's not something that you can put like, okay, it will take us 3 hours and 16 minutes to figure out why the combat doesn't work in the game. You have to go for that process of like tweaking it, testing it again, tweaking it, testing it again, tweaking it, testing it again until it works. And that is the creative part of making games. And the biggest problem is, fundamentally, for games to be fun, constricting it will suffocate it. And I know I sound like a very much like an indie dev of like, you need to give us time to create art. But it is the reality of what we're doing. Like 80% of people who work in games are not IT. 80% of people who work in games are creatives of one sort or another. But that's what makes games so great. That's the bit that makes us fall in love with games, and it makes it so different. That's why a mobile game is more fun than the app that's tracking the GPS of your car.
Yeah. You say that. There was a time where Google Maps switched that your representation to a Mario Kart. That was a fun day. So.
Did you see the one when they did Link as well?
Oh, I missed that.
Oh, it was great. Like the little yellow man was Link.
Oh, wow.
But it's that sense of fun, like, because if you think about it in practicality, someone sat and was thinking about it. It was like, oh, we should test it. They dropped it in and they tested it. No one was like, we need to have a fun, creative idea by 1st of April, 2018. Yeah. It just, you have to give space for creativity, and that will mean delays, and that will mean changes, and that will mean all of these things. And thank God, because otherwise we're gonna keep churning out the same exact formula of the same exact thing, and it's just not gonna be fun.
Yeah. So then on the media side and Imogen, what do you think can be done? What actions or considerations can be made on the media side to help with expectations to ensure more successful launches?
I think number one is probably honesty. People being genuinely honest in terms of how they're communicating it to the media. Often not seeing the media as an enemy for reporting on things. Sometimes, there are media outlets that will, for example, avoid leaks and whatever. But it's for example, for some people that I was really upset on behalf of From Software with the Elden Ring leaks that happened, because I was like, this sucks. This really, really sucks. But the thing is that I have to report on this. I will absolutely do my best to say this has happened, and put and not directly have the leaks within the thing, but I'll say like, here's a very broad outline. This is a very like massive spoiler alert for what's happened. But unfortunately, it's news. The fact that one of the most highly anticipated games in the next few years has had a huge amount of like images leaked from it. It's a news thing that it's just like, that is like the biggest story of the day, you know. That's something that I just have to talk about. But in that case, the company talking to us about like and us having an understanding as media of what's going on and what led to that happening means that other people will be like, oh, this does suck, these leaks suck, and that would stem like issues like, they're just doing this to hype the game. Like, some people are just like, leaks are just there to hype the game, leaks are there to do XYZ, like so many like misconceptions. And I also think when it comes to some examples that we've seen, Among Us and Fall Guys, for example, honesty with the community and having like an actual like personable persona, a conversation with your community would also really help, because then people are like, oh, I know the social media for this. They've never lied to me before, and they're being honest, and they're showing us some behind the scenes, and they're like being and they're actually talking to us and like answering questions and trying to like really get us to understand what's going on. And actually, I was Apex Legends Respawn recently. One of the devs just took a screenshot of the patch notes. I was like, this is what we're doing, like in internal systems. And someone else working at Respawn was like, I didn't think we'd be the person to leak our own like patch notes. like you just went and just screenshotted our systems and just told people. And so yeah, I think honesty is the main thing for me. Is that if I mean, as secretive as games should be sometimes about like, all like, you know, hiding an appropriate amount and like reserving an appropriate amount of information, actually talking to people and trying to limit the speculation that you see that people will have about anything, because you give people a grain of salt and they will make a 3-course meal out of it.
No, I agree. And I think, like you say, the honesty and like some level of transparency, but just with the idea that transparency doesn't necessarily mean you need to know every single thing about this game at all times. It's having that trust as well to say, like, we're making a game and we're going to show you things in due time, as we want, as is our sort of right to do as the people making the game. And then for me, I also think that just the understanding that, you know, mistakes can and will happen. I think to a certain extent, there's a element of like making a mistake or some kind of misstep is the worst thing that's ever happened, and therefore you are a terrible terrible developer. You're out, like you say, you're illegal. They must have done that on purpose to generate sales. Like, just saying, you know, mistakes happen, bad things happen, and allowing people to kind of at least give an opportunity to rectify mistakes, and just going on that journey with people, like you say. So yeah, I do feel that. And kind of one of the other things I was thinking is, it's going to sound weird, but in a way, do we need to make less ambitious games? Because sometimes we have this idea of having to always shoot for like pushing all technical boundaries. And, you know, I think, you know, we'd all agree that we like to see that technology pushed, especially like generation on generation. But I mentioned the example of like Spider-Man Miles Morales, as a game that reuses a game that had already been developed to create something new, but reusing a lot of the technology that's already in place and creating a really good, fun experience, a new story, and maybe some balance of that. And then the sort of, we're going to push this particular technical thing, like a Ratchet and Clank, like, as you know, you see that, and they're just jumping between worlds and loading in like completely new environments at the drop of a hat. So yeah, I think that kind of balance, like, what do you guys think?
I would like to see ambition in new areas. ambition doesn't necessarily mean technical, but it's what people focus on. And there are examples that you laid out where I can see that like the ambition was there in Cuphead, for example, in having such a specific art style and, you know, and imagery and having like a live band playing. That's ambition, just not technically, like in terms of just pushing graphics. And so yes and no. I think ambition should always be there, but ambition in like direct your ambition to something that isn't always just making it the biggest it needs to be, you know.
Sure.
Let's look at some of that. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, just to echo to what Imogen said, like, especially if you look at AAA titles and if you look at how safe they all play it, it's always like photorealistic art style with like all of these mechanics. You're always the good guy. You're always the hero. It's always like, for me, like, I would very much like to see games that challenge all of that. Give me weird, wacky graphics, you know, your mirror's edges and as you said, like Cuphead, another great example. Give me a game where like I'm the anti-hero. I'm like the worst human being possible. Why not? Like, just be a little bit braver. Not everything has to be photorealistic, run it, I don't know, however many FPS and so on. Like, try me. Just, yeah.
What were you going to say, Quang?
I think we have to, like, I'm a big fan of the Street Fighter series and how they've done things in terms of like with Spider-Man, they've taken the core concept and they've refined it through the different variations of it. And I know there's a lot of people who are annoyed of having to pay for this, what they feel was the same game, but it's not the same game. It's a refining of it. Maybe it's the same tech, but they've built upon that. They've made it better. They've made it the best it could be with the time that they have. And I feel that we can learn from being able to accept that, you know, the amount of time they had from Spider-Man and then Spider-Man Miles Morales is a very short amount of time. And the original engine for the first Spider-Man would have took years to make. To make a brand new engine from scratch, it's going to take you another big chunk of time. But let's look at the new story. The Miles Morales game is incredible for story. Like, I've not even played it. I've only seen clips and tweets about it, and it literally, those have made me cry. And like the emotion that is driven through that story is incredible. And
I can confirm.
I can't wait to get to it. I can't wait to get hold of it and play it for myself, and actually emote with this and go through the storyline. And the engine doesn't matter in that respect. The engine is solid. It does what it does. It took all the bits. It said, this works. I can build a great new story with this. And yeah, I think that and Street Fighter, again, tweaking the engine they have already and making it better and adding to it is a completely valid way to go.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that, and I agree with that. And one of the other things I want to make sure that we get to, because as part of what we do with GamePad, we often sort of work with young people who want to aspire to be in the games industry in some capacity. So as we're talking about the future and things that can be done, I just want to get like a last sort of things to think about, considerations, tips, because you all sort of work in different areas. And I know Annie, as someone in game development and sort of working with a team in that sense, like, are there any tips or considerations that you can give people who are thinking about going into the industry as it goes to game development?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, just make a game. There is like so many amazing tools that are free out there. Even if you don't manage to finish it, even if the game is not that great, it doesn't matter. It's more about going for the process and understanding the process, no matter is what position you're going. Even if you're going as a 2D artist and you're hoping never to see code in your life, there is some amazing tools out there that can help you comprehend better what everyone else is doing. It will make your life massively easier, because the people who have consideration for the rest of the team and the rest of the pipeline are worth their weight in gold. They are the ones that are the most collaborative. So I would say like start from there. And yeah, just try it. And I would say for people that don't want to go into the industry, also try to make a game. I think it will make you like very, very compassionate.
Yeah, get that appreciation for the process.
Yeah.
Quang, do you have any considerations or tips for people?
I would say, don't be afraid to try something new. Look at different angles. Go, I don't know, look at different industries. The film industry is amazing. It's got a longer history than video games, and a lot of things we're seeing video games go through, the film industry's already been through. Look at different genres. Don't always look at making an FPS a shooter. There are so many different types of games. Look at things that are different. Look at things like Journey, Gone Home. There are so many game types that are out there, and don't be afraid to try something different. Be true to yourself. And fair enough, it might be an FPS game. Maybe you want to make an FPS game.
That might be true. Yeah, that might be your truth.
But think about how can you do it differently? How can you be different from all the other FPS games out there?
Cool. Right, and then maybe on the media side of things, like Imogen, for that person who wants to cover games and just looking at these like large releases, what can you give to them?
2 things. One is just start covering, just start doing it, just start doing the thing that you want to do. I think even more than with game development, game criticism and game writing, like media side, is even easy to get into, because if you like games, you already have an opinion on games. You know what you like, you know what you think is good and bad about games, and you can open a Google Doc. It's right there. If you're watching this, you have a Google
it's in the
Doc
other tab.
Right there.
It's probably open
in the tab
already.
and you can just start writing your thoughts. Doesn't have to be good, doesn't have to be complete. Just start formulating those ideas and diversify the things that you play, because they're not going to all be what you expect games to be. They're never, a small blurb on a Steam page is not going to give you a really good idea of what the game is, especially when sometimes it's deliberately there to subvert your ideas of what things might be. Doki Doki Literature Club, for example, that is a great example of a game that on the face is something completely different. Though, warning, don't go play that if you're like below the age of 18. Don't go play that game. There are indie games like Undertale that would really surprise you. Disco Elysium, I love Disco Elysium, for example, and that game on the surface as a top-down RPG, but it's amazingly complex in a lot of ways. Basically, just start trying things out. Pay attention to what people that you would love to do are doing, and just pay attention. Consume other people's opinions as well. Mull them over. Diversify the things that you are intaking generally, and then start formulating your ideas. And if you do that enough online, and you will find yourself in a job. And I don't know how that happened to me, but you will just eventually you'll work there, and people are like, "Oh, you're a professional," and you're like, "What? Me?"
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm very professional. No, that's really good advice. And I think just going back to the thinking behind this panel is we have this time where we have these games that are getting bigger and bigger, and in a way it kind of comes from a certain mindset in terms of everything needing to be bigger, and as Annie mentioned, specifically technically bigger and push the boundaries. But I think for people that are looking to go into industry, like, it doesn't need to be that, or you don't need to focus your attention on that. So there are other ways to make games, there are other ways to sort of cover games and get that appreciation for them, so that ultimately we can get games that, work better. Basically, work better, and the discourse around them is a bit more reasonable in terms of like expectation management. So that's been our panel. I hope people have enjoyed that discussion. Before we go, we want to make sure that we let people know where they can find our panel online. So now I know which box everyone is in. I'm going to go for the top left and start with Annie. Annie, where can people find you, your team online, and I guess look forward to your game?
Yeah, so we only got our trademarks the other day, so there is still complete social media blackout at the moment in terms of the game, but very, very soon we're gonna have news. You can find me on Twitter at Annie_PSD. And yeah, if you want to chat more, yeah, message me. I'm happy to chat.
All right, and we're gonna jump over to the top right. Imogen, where can people see all your words?
So if you want to read my writing, I am published on GAMINGbible, part of LadBible these days. But you can find me on Twitter at Mellor, and if you want to, again, message me, you can, absolutely. And if you want to join my live streams and stuff that I do there, I am under the name Momento, M0RMENTO, on Twitch.
Cool. And Quang, let us know where they can find you.
Sure. So my micro studio is Asobi.tech. That's ASOBI.tech. Asobi is the Japanese word for play. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And if you want to ask me anything in person, QuangDX on Twitter as well. Just slide into those DMs and ask questions.
Cool. All right. Don't say they didn't warn you. So, and if you're watching this, you probably already know where you can find me and mayamada, but we're at mayamada on Twitter, at mayamadatees on Instagram. Follow us on Twitch as well, and check out the next GamePad event for more discussions like these. We're also doing monthly panels and interviews, again, all with the aim of raising awareness of different career paths in the industry or topics such as these to get people thinking, particularly those that have an interest in being in the games industry. So as we wrap up, I want to say thank you to our panel for joining me, for taking your time to have these discussions. I encourage people watching to go and find them, follow them online, just online, nothing else. And you can also find us as well, as I've mentioned. So let us know your thoughts in the comments. You can join the GamePad Discord. If you're old-fashioned like I kind of am, you can send us an email with your feedback to gamepad@mayamada.com. I mentioned don't follow us on Twitch, on YouTube. And if you are interested in hearing more of my thoughts, you can subscribe to our podcast, Story X Story, where my co-host Tazzy and I discuss stories across pop culture and have different interviews and discussions with a variety of guests across different industries. So you can check all that and the links to our guests in the description. That's all for me for now. See you all soon. And in the meantime, stay safe and take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey there, I'm Nigel from mayamada. Thanks for watching our video. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the other great videos we have on the channel. You can also join the GamePad Discord and check out the next event at gamepad.events. We'll see you soon.